First of all, I want to thank everyone for coming out. All right, welcome. We're going to cut to the chase. I'd like Mr. Brian Horning and Mr. Leroy Williams and who else? Simon Kowitsky. Am I right?
That's right. You got, yeah, that's a NYCHA team.
Okay, that's the NYCHA PAC program. Okay. I would like for them to make their presentation on the PACT, where you are with regards to Baychester, formerly Baychester, and then we'll just go forward from there. All right. And like I said, this is educational. This is not a war.
That sounds good. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hall. We've also been joined by our partners at Baychester, and I think it would be good if they can introduce themselves as well. L&M team, if you want to introduce it, L&M and CNC team, if you want to introduce yourselves, I think that would be great.
Hi, this is Ayana Oliver Taylor. I'm the project manager responsible for the Baychester fee development. Nice to meet everyone.
Okay.
Good evening, Thomas Herrera, Development Community Affairs.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Hi, good evening. Nancy Cornelius, Vice President of Community Affairs and Development. Wish everybody a good evening.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to let you take the floor so you can explain L&M and what has transpired to this point and where you're at right now.
Okay, great. And thank you so much to the board, to Mr. Hall for your leadership, to Mr. McNeil for your leadership as well. And George also too. It's been a pleasure working with all of you for many years. So I think the presentation you'll see today that we're about to give is a story of success that is sorely needed to not only this area of the Bronx, but also throughout the NYCHA portfolio. HUD over the years in Washington, over the years, as we all know, has underfunded public housing, not only in New York City, but nationwide. One of the few tools that they have offered public housing authorities to get themselves to a state of good repair and to finally modernize their portfolios is something known as the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program. This is a program that where tenants are converted from Section 9, which is the public housing funding, to Section 8. And Simon, my colleague, will explain a little bit more on the mechanics of that. In Baychester, in this district, it was a little bit different. It's not a traditional RAD, but it uses the tools of RAD. And the reason for that is Baychester was built locally, and it did not have a funding source attached to it. And so for the first time here, we're able to bring in a regular subsidy here and a different management approach. And I invite anybody who has not been to Baychester to please, even if you just walk by it, even if you walk the grounds, the upgrades are incredible. The residents there who I've spoken to, especially Ms. Gross, the TA leader, are thrilled with the new upgrades. And we will also want to talk too. We want to build on the success of Baychester and work with the residents in Edenwald to show similar success. So with that, I will give it to Simon. And he has a presentation. And, I know my colleagues and I will be glad to stay for as many questions as you have.
Thank you, Brian, for the introduction, and good evening, community board members. Thank you for hosting us tonight and inviting us to participate in your meeting. Again, my name is Simon Kowitsky. I'm the Vice President for Portfolio Planning on the real estate team here at NYCHA. So just a really quick background about the work that we do within the real estate department. Our work is guided by a plan you may be familiar with called NYCHA 2.0. And we use 3 different tools to facilitate comprehensive investments in our developments. As Brian mentioned, the PACT program, which was implemented at Baychester and which we're now working on at Edenwald, is really the meat and potatoes of what we do. It allows us to invest in really comprehensive repairs and modernizations to our properties. But we also want to think about where we have opportunities to generate revenue that can be used to invest and make repairs. So always thinking about opportunities to sell air rights, for example, or facilitate redevelopment to create affordable housing and other community serving uses. These tools are all used together, and they're known as the NYCHA 2.0 strategy. The PACT program specifically, again, the real focus of what we do and raises the greatest level of resources for our public housing communities. But it's not just about investing in the building stock. A big focus of what we're trying to do here is also think about how we can achieve community goals and priorities. Yes, we want to invest in the bricks and mortar and repair all those things that we've neglected over the years and have had limited resources to address. But there's so many other things like, and we'll see that in Baychester, certainly through investments in public spaces and partnerships with community organizations, fixing up our community centers, and other things that our residents really desire and want for their long-term health and prosperity of their neighborhoods. And this is all grounded in engagement with communities. We've done a lot of work in recent years to refine our approach to working closely with residents to identify what their goals are and make sure that they're carried through and implemented. Again, this is a really substantial opportunity to make once in a lifetime investments, and we don't want to let it fall by the wayside. We don't want anything to fall through the cracks. So as Brian mentioned, we are faced with an enormous shortfall in funding that we need to modernize our portfolio. And I use the chart here shown on the slide to kind of emphasize that point. So the blue bars show the level of funding we need to fully modernize our portfolio of housing. And it showed that the need was 6.6 billion in 2006, and in 2017 had grown to $31.8 billion. Today, that's estimated to be over $40 billion. So $40 billion to stabilize our housing stock and preserve affordability. So what we show in the orange bar on this graph is actually what we get from the federal government to repair our properties. And you can see over the years that funding has remained relatively steady and not increased or risen to achieve that gap that we have. So nowhere near what we need to modernize and stabilize our properties. The PACT program, which you also may be familiar with the term RAD, Rental Assistance Demonstration, it uses a federal program called RAD to essentially convert the funding source from public housing from the Section 9 program to the project-based Section 8 program. That's really all we're doing. And in doing that, it allows us to unlock funding. I could talk a little bit about how the mechanics work, but by converting the Section 8 subsidy, we can take that to a bank. We can't take loans out against Section 9 funding. We don't get a long-term contract from the federal government for our public housing dollars. That's really a year-to-year allocation. When you get a Section 8 contract from HUD, it's a 20-year contract and it renews automatically. So we take that to the city's housing finance agency. We raise financing, and that allows us to make all of these repairs all at once to the development. HUD doesn't allow us to do piecemeal investments either. We have to fully address the full scope of identified needs at that development in order for them to allow us to do this. And they also have built-in protections that really grandfather all of the rights that residents have as Section 9 residents into the Section 8 program. So homes have to remain permanently affordable, and residents maintain the same rights that they have as public housing residents. In New York City, of course, because we have to be fancy, we have this other term called PACT. And one of the reasons we do that is really because we've layered on a lot of additional enhancements to what HUD, the federal government, actually require of us through the RAD program. And these all go towards preserving protections for residents and preserving affordability. So the way that PACT actually works, the mechanics of it, is that we partner with private organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, and again, the folks from L&M and others are on the call here today. They're an example of a successful partnership. But NYCHA leases the property to this development team. They conduct all of the repairs and renovations to the property. They take over as the day-to-day property manager. So NYCHA is no longer involved in the day-to-day manage of that site. It is taken care of by this new private manager. And then we also require them to provide enhanced social services. And that usually takes the form of dedicated on-site social workers. They're now there on site. They work directly with residents, and they also create new community programs and services that residents can take advantage of course, tailored to their needs. And again, NYCHA leases the land. We maintain full ownership of all the land and buildings. And we step more into an oversight role at this point. So again, we're not there managing the property day to day, but we're still responsible for the section providing the subsidy. So we provide the subsidy to the development team to actually operate the property. Residents still come to us to certify their incomes and set their rents. And we fill vacant apartments off of our Section 8 waitlist. And we monitor conditions at the property. So we receive reports every month from our development partners. We meet with them regularly. Residents reach out to us. They can still take advantage of the customer contact center if any issues arise. And we can kind of mediate and work those out behind the scenes with our partner to make sure that they're addressed in a timely fashion. And through all the legal documents that we pen with our partners, we retain the ability to step in at any time and even remove the property manager unilaterally if that's something that we would like, if that we need to do, if they're in breach of any of the agreements in our contracts. There are a lot of protections, as I said, that are baked into the RAD program, and these are some of the key ones that residents really care about. So again, the rents will remain capped at 30% of household income. Residents continue to have succession rights. Resident associations still have all their rights protected. They can organize and advocate, and they still receive TPA funding from us. Residents are not rescreened. So this goes to that point about that I mentioned about residents are grandfathered, right? So the way that the program was set up by HUD was that no matter what your income is, your household composition, you will automatically qualify for the project-based Section 8 program as a result of this initiative. Even if you make too much money to qualify for Section 8, it doesn't matter. You still transition to the Section 8 program. You get all of the renovations, you get the new property manager, you get all of the new things. Residents, of course, have the right to always renew their lease. They can add relatives onto their lease, and they all have the succession rights. There are similar grievance hearing processes, and of course, the investments that we make through this program are all covered by Section 3. And our development partners have to provide a certain level of job opportunities to NYCHA residents. Often we see them do a whole range of different training and workforce development opportunities to make sure that, beyond just offering opportunities to residents, we're really being proactive about making sure people can be well positioned, that job seekers can be well set up and well positioned to actually apply and get those jobs. So as I mentioned, HUD actually doesn't allow us to convert to the Section 8 program without a commitment to fully renovate and address all of the identified needs at the property. You'll see a few pictures here from Baychester actually, but this breaks down into a few different key areas that of course are really important to our residents. The building systems all get addressed. Boilers, furnaces, hot water heaters are either upgraded or fully replaced. Our facades, our roofs, our elevators, again, all get looked at very closely and they're replaced or upgraded as needed. Our common spaces are all renovated, our lobbies, our mail rooms, our hallways, our stairwells, the sites and grounds. So the public spaces where people gather outside, playgrounds, landscaping, and of course apartments. So every development has different needs, but what we typically do as a result of our PACT investments are we replace all the kitchens, we replace all of the bathrooms, windows get changed out, the flooring is replaced, and Again, the nature of the program is different from how our other capital programs work, which often can come in a piecemeal fashion, right? You fix one problem just to find that another problem has cropped up. Through PACT, we actually do walkthroughs of every single apartment with our development partners, and residents have a chance to point out all of the issues in their unit to us. So if there's a recurring leak behind a wall because an old pipe, if there's a consistent pest issue that's taking place, or old electrical wiring, or whatever it may be, they have the opportunity to point that out to us, and we can go into the wall and we can replace those pipes, or we can replace the wiring to make sure that it's safe. We can do all that through this program, and that's not something that we typically can address in such a comprehensive way through our other capital programs. Here are some other nice pictures of work in progress and completed at the Baychester Houses, and also this aerial shot here is of Baychester. Some of our projects receive energy efficiency improvements. The site here at where was this? This was at Ocean Bay Bayside, received solar panels on their roof. Again, I mentioned that bathrooms are replaced, playgrounds and public spaces. The facade, so in the bottom left here at Baychester, the brickwork and plastering was all, and molding was all redone. Kitchens are replaced in the photo here shown at Murphy Houses. And then this is an image on the bottom right-hand side of Baychester in a typical hallway. One of the reasons that we're really excited about the program is that it's a proven model, and we're proving it more day by day. We have already transitioned 9,500 apartments to the project-based Section 8 program through PACT. They are all at different stages of repair and renovation. Ocean Bay Bayside was the first one to be fully rehabilitated, and now Baychester and Baychester Murphy have followed suit. We're involved with another 12,000 apartments right now at different stages, and altogether are working on over 20,000 apartments. We've already invested about $1.8 billion in capital repairs towards these developments. And we're looking to double that, more than double that, with these other developments that we have in our pipeline here. Here's a list of all of the sites that have already converted through PACT. I like to just show it plain as day, because people often ask, you know, what are the specific developments and how many units were there. So you can see Ocean Bay Bayside was the first property that converted in 2016. That was about 1,400 apartments and received $317 million in repairs. Twin Parks West, Baychester, Highbridge Franklin, Baychester Murphy closed and converted in 2018. Received $116 million in repairs. And then last year, we converted a group of different scattered site developments across Brooklyn and Manhattan, together over $800 million worth of investment. And these are the properties that I mentioned where we're in active engagement with residents right now. The sites at the top here, that's a pre-development next to them in the right-hand column. Boulevard, Linden, Williamsburg, Harlem River. These are all have developers assigned already, and they're working to convert and start construction this year. The other set of properties from Edenwald down, so Edenwald, Frederick Samuel Apartments, the Reed and Park Rock consolidations and Union Avenue consolidations are all in the resident engagement process. We've released a procurement to identify partners. So those developers and GCs and property managers who are going to work with us to implement the program. And we're expecting to receive proposals in the coming weeks. So just really quickly, and then I'll turn it over to the Baychester team, but here's some information about the Edenwald project. I know you all are very familiar with it. I think it's our largest single development in our entire portfolio, over 2,000 apartments with 42 buildings, 7 boilers, and 24 elevators, just really massive, and located directly across the street from Baychester. And so the level of work that we're expecting to do and to bring to Edenwald through the PACT program is pretty substantial because it's so large. This is an estimate based on the 2017 physical needs assessment, by the way. I expect this to grow as we refine the scope of work with the partner. But right now we're estimating that we would invest over $444 million in Edenwald. And I've broken out the different investment areas. Again, this was all documented in the physical needs assessment, but when the development team is on board and selected, we're going to be working really closely with them and with residents to make sure that we're getting this right. We're identifying all the different things that need to be repaired. But again, I laid this out here as an example. We looked at apartments, the kitchens, the bathrooms, within the buildings, the roofs, the stairwells, the windows, elevators, electrical systems, heating plants, and then the grounds and the landscaping and public spaces. You can see here on the chart in this diagram on the right-hand side of the slide, total repair cost per unit. And this is just to compare the level of investment that Edenwald is going to see on a per unit basis. So if you take this overall anticipated investment and break it down on a per unit level, each apartment is going to get about $218,000 worth of investment in those apartments. Again, that's not every unit gets all that because some of that goes towards renovating the unit and some of that goes towards the common spaces and the heating plants and all that. But just to give you a level of the scale that we're talking about, it's really, really impressive. And I show what the level of need is across NYCHA overall at $187,000 a unit, just to show the conditions that Edenwald is in. One of the reasons we wanted to work in Edenwald and how we've started to select developments for the PACT program is really based on how poor the conditions are. So we are really targeting this program where we can have the greatest possible impact on residents' quality of life and raise the most funding for residents. This is just a really high-level overview of the process we've been going through with the Edenwald community. And as I mentioned, been working very closely with Leroy and his whole team to implement a really robust resident engagement strategy. And excuse me, we started working with the resident association leaders at Edenwald back in the fall of last year. We had preliminary conversations with them about what their community needs. We talked in conversations like we're doing right now about what the PACT program is and what it can deliver for their community. Working with them, we then moved on to larger resident town halls where we gave very similar presentations. We did a series focused on resident rights and protections in the Section 8 program, and also what the design and the construction process is going to look like. And then at the end of last year, we released what we call an RFEI, a request for expressions of interest. It's the same thing as an RFP to identify those PACT partners. We're now working closely with the Resident Association to actually prepare them to review those proposals with us. Something that's brand new that we're doing that we've never done before is actually bringing resident leaders closer into the process of selecting those partners. In the past, NYCHA made the selection on our own, and we hope that residents felt good about who the team was. In many cases, as in Baychester, it's worked out. Residents have been asking for this for some time, and we're happy to now oblige. The resident leaders at Edenwald are going to have a seat at the table in reviewing the proposals that come in and working with us to make the selection that works for their community. We would be doing that process with the resident association leaders this spring, and then hope to introduce the new partners to the wider community in the summer. That's really when we roll up our sleeves and we start to work on this very detailed rehabilitation plans, the property management plans, the social services plans. That whole process takes a year, and we've worked to outline a whole process that our development partners need to follow, again, in working closely with NYCHA and with the resident leadership to really go through a design process. What are the things that you want addressed in your community, in your apartment? What kinds of finishes do you want to see? Appliances? What are your priorities? And we go through that over the entire course of the year. At the end of that process, residents have to sign new leases because they're no longer NYCHA public housing residents. They sign Section 8 leases. And we provide free legal assistance to all of our residents at our sites now. So there was a lot of distrust rightly so, and even confusion among our residents about having to sign a new lease and being very nervous about what this means for their rights and their tenancy. And so as of this last project we closed in Manhattan last year, we've been getting the Legal Aid Society involved, and they set up a hotline and consult one-on-one with residents in connection with the lease signing. So no resident is expected to sign a lease until they've had a chance to consult with a legal aid attorney, if that's something that they want to do, and they get all their questions answered, and it's free, independent legal advice. Once the property converts to the Section 8 program, and in Edenwald, we're expecting that would happen around the springtime of next year, the repairs begin. And the repair process, or the renovation process, typically takes 1.5 to 2 years. In the case of Edenwald, because it's such a large property, might take a little bit longer. Residents, experience some disruption to their lives, of course, because the site becomes a construction zone in some ways, but nobody is asked to move from their apartment. All the work happens while they remain in their homes. The team works with them closely to create a construction schedule, and usually within a few weeks, the team moves through each building and does the repair work in each unit, and then moves on to the next unit. So residents, we try to minimize the disruption to the greatest extent possible. But residents do see some level of construction happening in their apartment for about a month to 6 weeks at a time. And then the team moves on and works in additional units. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. I just wanted to give everyone an overview about the PAC program, the work we've been doing, and what we've been setting up at Edenwald. I'll now turn it over to the development team at Baychester to give you more detail about the work that they've done over there. If anyone else would like to add anything from the NYCHA team to what I've said, you can feel free to do that now.
No, Simon, I just want to, there was a question in the chat about the developers and how do they make their funding?
Oh, yes. Sure. So development partners get fees for the services they provide, just like any other business. There are certain types of fees built into the project, so they receive a fee up front for their construction work, and then they receive an annual property management fee for taking care of the building. And that's how they receive funding. We also require developers to put in their own money. So it's not all NYCHA and the city's housing finance agency putting money on the line. They have to put in their own equity and put their skin in the game. And so they make that money back over time too. It usually takes quite a number of years, but they make that money back through the cash flow of the property with some interest as well.
Okay, listen, before L&M takes over, I just wanted to get a short Q&A with regards to what was just said, Mr. Kwiatkowski. Number one, what I'd like to know is this. NYCHA is NYCHA, okay? There are a lot of circumstances that exist. One of which is the bias case, and another is the federal monitor that's been created in 2019. And this pertains to the mold and the mildew in the developments. What I'd like to know is, does this opportunity or this enforcement regulation that has been created by the Southern District, does that carry over to these developments that are now being taken over? I don't want to use this word privatized because it seems to be debatable, but I'm going to go back to that word in the future. But I want to know, are the rules still the same? Do the mold and mildew affiliations, as it lends itself to the regular NYCHA developments, still coincide with this transitional situation and the folks in Baychester as we speak?
Thanks, Mr. Hall. I appreciate the question. So this is still an open question and something that the plaintiffs in bias in NYCHA actually have an open argument right now in court under what how bias is read in the RAD properties. So we can come back to you. Certainly, we can come back to this board with a final answer. But Judge Pauly, is going to make a final decision soon on that.
Okay.
I'll just add that part of the PACT program and the scope of repairs that we make here, we address all of those issues related to lead, pests, mold. They have to be remediated or abated as a part of the scope of this program.
Well, all right. I understand that because all of these developments have to be brought up to code. So that's a given. All right. I also just wanted to add that we did have a brief conversation with Chuck Schumer very recently, and hopefully there'll be a lot of assistance forthcoming in the name of housing in the forefront per se. So some of these circumstances will probably die out, but the course of action that is being created, I'm very much concerned with the circumstances forthcoming as far as EMOR is concerned. I'm happy to see that you finally figured out that the presidents need to have a seat at the table. All right, that had previously been problematic, but once again, in the origination of this, all right, because of the CFR 964 rules and regulations, you were supposed to receive approval from the residents in order to go forward with a pact of this type. And was that done? Was that done in its entirety? Let's say, for instance, in Baychester, with 400 and some odd residents, did half of the residents coincide and decide to go forward with this type of program?
Others on the call can feel free to chime in on exactly the engagement process that happened at Baychester, but certainly your point is well taken. And the process that we've set up for ourselves now, and we're doing it at Edenwald, is to make sure this is a true partnership with the tenant association. So, if they have problems, we don't move forward. We've been lucky to have really collaborative and willing partners at Edenwald and at other places where we're working, and really do view it as a partnership and look for that wherever we do our work.
I'm sorry, this is Leroy Williams. So I do want to add that 964 doesn't give that requirement, as you stated, with the voting of residents. It's asking us to engage residents in the process that they'll be in, so that they can make sure that they are fully a part of the engagement process, just not being told what is it that's going to be happening. So I just wanted to make a clear distinction that it's not an up and down vote as a part of a requirement of 964.
Okay. I'm in agreement with that. I as one of the resident leaders on a citywide level, I just wanted to make sure that there was conversations with CCOP as it lends itself to this type of transition. All right, because I'm hearing otherwise. Although I'm not a citywide chair, but I have several conversations with Danny Barber, and for whatever reason whatsoever, I don't think he's totally approved of a situation of this magnitude. And that's why I'm bringing that forward. However, I do understand it's not so much the resident, it's the combination of the resident leadership throughout the city as it lends itself to what we're describing. So I
Thanks, Mr. Hall. And also, too, what HUD for RAD, what they call for is very minimum. It only calls for 2 meetings. And we start engagement at least a year before. And I think if you spoke, I don't know if Ms. Gross is here today, but she was very involved very early on, and is and the PNC and L&M team work with her very, very closely in all the decisions that are made, in that development. And I'm sure they could speak to that too, but it really is a partnership there between the residents and our development partners.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I mean, I had some engagement with that also when they first got started. All right. Because all problems do come to the community board. And we had a couple of issues, but what I did is I took it to NYCHA management and they rectified things because it was in the beginning stages. So that's understandable. All right. But go ahead and proceed.
We have two questions. Hold on. Michael Burke has his hand up, and Danny Barber wanted to ask a question. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay, goes to any. My question is, I before, Ms. I
don't know if anybody else is having trouble hearing you,
Yeah,
Dr. Burke.
we
Okay.
can't hear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you're breaking up on us. It's very sporadic.
why answer while you're funding? Okay, you want me to try?
Yeah, it's still pretty bad. Yeah, we got a triangle for you now. Danny Barber, if you're here, ask your question.
All right. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you guys for inviting me tonight.
Hold on, Dr. Burke.
I want to go back to the number question. So, what tenant rights from 964 actually transfer over with the RAD conversions? We had a meeting earlier dealing with the blueprint, and this is a similar question that I wanted to get for the RAD. So what tenant protection rights from 964 transfer over with the RAD conversion?
I'm sorry. So, Mr. Barber, and you, when you say, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? So, are you talking about like resident associations? Are you talking about like what part, or are you talking about just the whole 964 regulations? Because of course there's different parts of it.
Yes, because that was a part. Simon was there. That was a part of our conversation this afternoon in our earlier meeting. That Nines and HUD was involved in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained tonight that Mr. Barber raised a great point. If you're going to say that the tenant protection rights from 964 transfer over, then you should.
I'm not sure if he.
Yeah, you cut out, Mr. Barber.
Answer what specific tenant protection rights transfer over from 964? Because in the presentation, you're saying that all of the tenant rights from 964 transfer over. So there's 24 CFR 964.135 that gives them the right to be a part of the management operations. Sitting in a meetings from thought process to completion, does that transfer over? We know
does,
that the right to engage transfer over, but to what extent they have the right to engage?
So I would say, and I know Eladam is going to present, so there's greater participation in this actual program, right? So resident associations from the point onset that, of course, I call everybody to start the process until, whoever our partner is, actually make sure that they're there throughout the entire process. And I wish that,
Mr. Williams,
hear you.
you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question.
So again,
we at that point earlier. So if you're gonna say, I'm sorry, that's the fire truck.
That's fine.
If you're gonna say that the 964 transfer over, you should be able to let the residents know how much of 964. Is it 964 in its entirety? What is it?
Okay, so we can, Simon, we can work on responding in writing to make sure that we're clear on what is it from 964 transfers
Well,
over.
Simon, we're gonna expedite that meeting. I'm gonna speak with Ms. Hudson to expedite that meeting so that we can get to the bottom of it with HUD. So before any more presentations get done, we need to be able to work that part out because that's the residents' fear.
Right.
The residents are fearing switching from Section 9 to Section 8, and they're not going to have any protection rights because typically under Section 8, the residents cannot gather. The residents don't get tenant participation funds to do programs. This is something that NYCHA is writing into a contract for the residents. So we need to know to what extent does it go? And just give you a heads up, in the bylaws of the CCOW, we created a new committee.
Yes, we're aware.
RAD Conversion Committee. So Mr. Barber will be assistant resident leaders from NYCHA switching over in the conversion for 2 years. And if the resident wishes to extend it, then we can extend it. And we will be working closely with the management company, the resident association, and NYCHA so that we can ensure that the residents stay protected and that they stay safe.
Agree.
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me. Dr. Burke, I think, worked out his Wi-Fi issues. Can you hear us, Dr. Burke?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. I don't know what happened. I apologize for that. So
You're much better.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to my original question. My question was in regards to, I want to say slide 3 is where you had the funding issue, and you said there was a massive lack of funding. And actually, go back. Is that slide 3? Yes, it was a massive, slide 4. There was a massive lack of funding in capital. So is that funding from the federal? Is that funding from the state government? Is that funding from the city? Why is there such a huge disparity in the lack of capital funding versus the lack of need?
Right. The bulk of the money is federal. In fact, the federal government is the only one who has an obligation to fund public housing. Now, we do receive, thanks largely to the mayor and the city council, a good amount of funding from the city, but they're under no obligation to fund it. They only do it because this is a value. In the state, over the last 7 years, has contributed about $650 million to NYCHA properties. But mostly, this is a federal obligation.
There's a little more to it than that, Dr. Burke, but you'd have to get the entire history since 1934 to the present, and it would tell you the story with regards to funding and who did what. All right. And when I say that, I'm talking about Reagan when he slashed the budget 50%, Nixon when he tried to do away with Section 8 in its entirety. You know, everyone had a role, which one way or the other, and all of this led to this circumstance that we're dealing with now. So there's a little more, but I'll have that discussion with you with regards to that.
All right. I just want to say that there's still more presentation to be given. I know that Anthony Reed has his hand up, so I don't know if Anthony has a question or if you have a follow-up, Dr. Burke. You're breaking up again. Yeah.
Hello,
Anthony.
George?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. To the gentleman that just spoke and said that the federal money was actually involved, does that mean that prevailing wage language will be in this project?
So this is federal continues to be federal property. And Simon, correct me if I'm wrong, but Davis-Bacon rules do apply.
So prevailing wage
That's
language
correct.
is actually
Prevailing wage requirements are in effect.
Right.
Yep.
and at that, I just want to know what are plans for the community benefits community hiring? Like, do we have a committee from the community that's actually going to be watching that? Do you a committee that's going to be formed, or can we form a committee to act from the community that can check on to make sure that these things happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. We can share whatever data or information we have about our hiring practices as well, and are always looking to do better. I think that's no problem. We work very closely with our Reese department to make sure
No,
that.
I'm talking about somebody from the community. I understand you have reach and you have whoever you have. I'm talking about individuals from the community, and that will actually be monitoring this. People from the community that see things happen, because reach is not going to be there every day. The community is there every day.
Yes, so with every resident association, you're allowed to put together these types of committees. So the easy answer is yes, and we will work with Mr. McNeil, and we can work with the community board to put together that committee to make sure that we're doing the actual job that we're saying today.
All right, being that, one more question, being that you're talking about community board, why haven't none of your possible candidates came to the community board to introduce themselves to the community board or address the community board about what they plans are to do? I think it's a total disrespect that they don't even come to the community board. It's good that you work with the residents, and don't get me wrong, but in Edenwald, it's not really just the residents, it's the community. It's a lot of community that's going to be affected by these plans also. So why nobody hasn't reached out to one of the best community boards in the city? That's very active. The community board gets all of the complaints more than anybody else. They're the meat and the potatoes. Nobody reaches out. You put these developers through whatever process you put them through. I think that it's definitely be coming through. They definitely coming through the community board. Because that's where the respect is. And I haven't seen none of you guys come by, introduce yourself, nothing. Everybody talking about partnership. The community board needs to be a partnership in this.
Right.
Go ahead.
Now, who wants to address that?
So Simon, you can start, and I can.
Sure. No, I appreciate the feedback, and I'm sorry, if we weren't as present with this community board as we should have been in the past.
Listen.
But
I don't want to hear
we
sorry.
can absolutely do that.
Hold up. I don't want to hear sorry. I don't want to hear I apologize. What are you going to do from now forward to lock in with the community board? What are you going to do exactly?
So I was about to say that going forward, we can absolutely plan to be in front of the community board more frequently. At Edenwald, we haven't identified a partner yet.
Right.
So there's no one to introduce you to, but as soon as they get identified, and again, we're going to work with the resident leaders to do that.
But I'm not talking about them being identified. I'm talking about before that process. For them to even think about coming to Edenwald, they need to come to the community board, do a presentation, talk about what they're trying to do, and let us address them and let them know what the community feels about it.
Sure. Well, we always start with the resident leadership at each development, and we're happy as we did tonight. We're happy to attend any community board or community event that we're invited to, but we can do a better job going forward of being proactive about reaching out to this board, knowing now that you all are interested in keeping in touch about our work. We can absolutely do that.
We're more than interested. Right. We're more than interested, and like Mr. Reed just said. Okay, we need to have more transparency. It's very important. This is one of the best community boards in the city. Okay, and the fact of the matter is, this action plan was just created. All right, you have a lot of residents in fear. They call it de facto privatization. All right, and on the other hand, you got folks saying, "Well, how do you make a profit?" But if you notice, the fact of the matter, the key word here is transparency or lack thereof. So Mr. Reed was right on point. And for the most part, I guess you're going to use your Section 3 housing. The community at large needs to know wholesale what is going on in the best interest of this word called community.
Right.
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay, we can move on with the presentation. I don't want to get caught up in questions.
Good evening, everyone. This is Thomas Herrera with Development Partners. We oversaw the transition at Baychester Houses in the Edenwald section of the Bronx. Thank you for having us this evening. Just want to give you a quick summary of our team membership, because it took a team to put this together. We have Mid-Bronx Desperados, MBD, who has completed over 2,300 units since its inception in 1974, a nonprofit that came to being to address, how many of you here remember the Bronx is burning and how decimated the Bronx was in the 70s and the 80s. It's one of those good community partners that has been there from the get, and we're really fortunate to have them as a part of our partners. We also have Camber Property Group, who is a mixed income and workforce developer that has successfully rehabilitated and preserved 7,000 units of affordable housing in the city. We have Development Partners, which has developed and preserved nearly 35,000 units. And over 8,500 of those units are in rehab, are rehabilitated through the first public-private partnership with NYCHA that took place. And we pride ourselves not only in being a developer, as some might think the stigma, but we really look into creating community partnerships and hearing the community and going to build relationships. Next slide. Can I control the slide? Next slide. Thank you. The continuation of the teams here, we have the Builders Group, a partner of LM Development, which has developed and completed 7,500 units, modernizations, including 1,500 NYCHA apartments. We have the management company, CNC Apartment Management, responsible with the day-to-day operations and the maintenance of our properties, which we manage over 18,000 units, and including 1,700 units that have undergone RAD conversion with NYCHA. And apart from those 1,700 units, we've also overseen 6,300 units that have gone a similar rehabilitation and over the past 6 years. And our community partner, we have a community partner in BronxWorks. They've been around since the 70s, really addressing many of the issues and the systemic issues of the Bronx. And they've been a community partner for over a generation, and they continue to be a community partner in the work that we do, and they're vital in all that we do in terms of resident outreach and just working with residents. Next slide. Here you can see the before and after of Baychester Houses. The before, which is kind of the standard brick facade for NYCHA developments. You can see some of the, on your far right corner, you could see just some of the corridors, the walkways, which was in much dire need of rehabilitation. And on the bottom, you see the conversion that took place. You see modernization of the facade. You see gardens. You see a beautifully renovated pathways that's beautifully lighted at night. And it's just amazing, just the transformation that's taken place, and really proud of the work that we did. Just a quick overview on the facade. I know we don't destroy or take away any of the brick that is surrounded in the buildings. We patch it with 3 inches of EIFS as an exterior insulation finishing system that we have. It helps waterproofing the building, and also it's a thermal envelope that covers the entire building, which essentially keeps it warm. It also is a beautiful material that we use that gave us an opportunity to change the look and to modernize it. And it's based on cement coating, which is in compliance, which is class 1 in compliance with building codes and fire safety development. Next slide. You can see more pictures of our walkways. You have modernized exercise areas for adults. You have a modernized playground with state-of-the-art sprinkling systems. You have a gazebo area where folks can gather in the summertime and just relax and just spend some time outside. And in the bottom, you see a panoramic view of just the changes that took place. You see a lot of the modernization, a lot of the green areas that you see were underdeveloped, and it's been completely developed, renovated, new fertilizer, new brick system. It's beautiful. At nighttime, the property is well lit. We have state-of-the-art camera systems that has been beneficial in the reduction of crime. It makes a lot of our residents feel safer. And this isn't me just talking, this is some of the feedback that I've gotten because my number is all over the property, and that's part of, you go to the next slide. And that's kind of part of this, what we look to do here. We like to create partnerships and be accessible. Here's the in-unit transformation. This is the unit here that was ADA accessible. And you can see the before, the unit, I'm sorry, it went blurry. Okay, now I can see it. You can see the before, the kitchen, you can see the bathroom, you can see the hallway corridors, you can see the laundry room. And in the bottom, you can see that same unit, the first two pictures, totally renovated. New flooring, new appliances, new cabinets. You can see the bathroom that has been modernized. It's looking beautiful, new lighting. A lot of the issues were fixed with this the ceilings and everything, and that's been a blessing to many of our residents. You look further to the right, you see the hallways. Now you see the differences. You can see a well-lit hallway. You see a modernized walls. You see just a lot of the difference in our construction that makes folks feel safer at night, that these hallways look nicer. We have the laundry room as an example. It was upgraded and totally transformed and way more efficient than before. Next slide. And this is kind of where we really shine, right? And I think from a personal note, I really am endeared to the work that I do and the work that we do here because we put communities first. If there's a textbook definition of community development, we should be next to it because we really, really focus on seeing what our residents need. Prior to us taking over, we had BronxWorks, our community partner, come in, do a resident survey to see what were the needs of the community. I mean, community, just everyone who was in Baychester Houses. How could we come alongside our residents and address many of the issues that they have? And the main issue that came out of that survey was health and wellness. And we were intentional in our structure upgrades to address the health concerns. We were intentional in creating partnerships with Grow NYC to bring a green market over to, I don't know if anyone has got the chance to see last year during the summer where the Eden Community Center is at. They had a green market there to address the food desert that currently exists in the Eden Wall section of the Bronx, and really trying to help not only make Baychester residents healthier and have them access to fresh produce, but also being a blessing to the whole community. And we really look out for community partnerships to engage our residents. We want the process to be as fair and democratic as possible. When we arrived to Murphy Houses, which is one of our partner developments with Baychester, they were forming a resident association, reached out to the community board to help with their election process, to make sure that we were kept out of it, to make sure that we preserve the integrity of the process. You can see that on the bottom, they were recognized and sworn in by Assembly Member Michael Blake, and the people holding the certificates are the executive board. And they maintain a great relationship with us, and they are our eyes and ears, and we work closely together. And sometimes there are things we don't want to hear, things that they don't want to hear, but we work together. That's part of a relationship, right? Where we continue to cultivate and work together and move forward. And we have community partnerships where we look to bring in folks to serve as our children, to serve as our seniors. During the pandemic, I think the leadership, we emboldened and empowered the leadership to look out for and seek out relationships and partnerships to address the food issue, to help reduce the curve, because it was very high at one point. And we have a lot of folks who are wheelchair bound, and we had a lot of seniors in that section of the Bronx. And we had a food pantry come once a week to deliver 200 meals to folks who were needy. And this is some of the things that we do. We have a standing partnership with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. During last fall, they came to the Bayden Community Center to have free vaccinations for the flu to help fight alongside the coronavirus pandemic. And now we're looking to create a partnership to bring and help vaccinate this section of the Bronx. So we're always looking to empower. In terms of the resident leadership, they maintain a lot of their funding, as Simon mentioned earlier. We also look to empower them to make sure they're well and to make sure that their needs are heard. It's not, you need to do this. No, we're not, it's not about that. We work to serve them. We work in the service of and the business of serving others. And we want to see folks flourish and prosper, and that's what we're here to do. And that's just a bit of a glimpse of some of the work that we do on the ground. Hand it over back to you all. Don't know anyone from my team want to add anything, but that was a little bit of the work that we do.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear that, Mr. Rivera. And to be honest, all right, Thomas. Be honest with you, you've done a great job. All right, to this point, you know, I usually get all the problems in the community, and at this point, the only thing I've heard about L&M is they won't answer the phone when people call. So that you need to look at. But other than that trivial pursuit circumstance, you've done a very good job. All right. So how quick is it when you have a public safety issue? How quick is your response time?
Well, hello? Okay. So we have a security team. The management company has a security team on site that walks the premises almost 24 hours a day. Whenever there's an incident, we make a report. We have a relationship with the local authorities. And if there's anything, for example, theft or anything of a grave matter, they are there to address those issues. And I think early on, that was a bit of an issue when we first took over, but it's kind of leveled off now that we have cameras in place. Folks are responsive. We're responsive to the needs of folks, and things always happen, right? But we have been very proactive. I know there was a lot of gathering before on the premises, folks, this party at night, and sometimes things got out of hand, and we were able to address those issues to not only say that you can't do this, but also show them the value of and the importance of respecting your neighbors and working together. And that's improved dramatically. And even when I came on, it was transitioning out, and that's non-existent to this day. I know that COVID came, and it hasn't been COVID came, but even when the summertime, when folks were kind of getting cabin fever from being inside, those issues were very much addressed, and we work closely with folks. And if ever there's suspected issue with a package, for instance, that's one of the biggest issues that we get calls for. for example, if there's a package that gets stolen, we're able to look at the camera, speak with local authorities, and that's been reduced dramatically. So we constantly look to improve. And duly noted on, you said we don't answer the phone as much, but we make a great effort. We might not answer the phone, but we're always there. But we'll take we want the premises, and we're always willing to help out. And
So
bless
let me also add to that if I can. I'm sorry, there's some feedback, so please forgive me if I keep saying huh. So I had the pleasure of being there in the beginning and seeing the transition. And I want to say that the modernization is not to, think that there is no substance there in the beginning, The modernization is to take a look and understand what the needs are, whether it's community led or whether it's resident led, listening to folks tell us what's happening. We did not want to take the approach that we were coming in and making changes. And so to that point, when we came in, please understand, we were still doing construction at the same time. So as soon as we closed and took over, there's still the process of going through the transformation of construction. So when you say, what is the response time? I would say it varied. I don't know what time you're speaking of, right? But I think right now the response time is, the good news is not only do we have cameras that we rely on the work, I think cameras are good for deterrence and also good to find out what had happened, right? But we also have folks on the ground, boots on the ground, that can address an issue, that can knock on the door, that someone can call if they, and we have several different resident folks that people can call. So someone may not call the 24-hour number, but they may know to call Thomas or call me, because I've gotten plenty of calls, right? But they may call the property management office. And I do know that, whereas there's, certain number of family members that are there, I can't say that I've touched every family member, so I think that's also something that we're always striving to do, reaching out and having relationships with everyone.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you very much. All right. Is there anyone else with regards to L&M? I have nothing but good things to say myself with regards to what you've done to this point. All right, so that's.
I do want to add. I want to add something. I do want to add some other things about our experiences and our processes, if you don't mind. And I think a lot of points that was raised. I certainly have heard Mr. Barber's name a number of times. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him, and I'm going to finally hear his voice tonight. But I do think it's a necessary. Can someone please sorry. I do think it's a necessary step to have more inclusive conversation about this, especially when you're dealing with change. And I don't think anybody thinks that's different. I think the more we do these projects, not just L&M, but the more that these projects are done, I think they can evolve to be where we want it. I guess I would like to say, from the experience that I've had each time, we have put more and more emphasis on making sure that it is a resident-led process, because it doesn't work. So when you see the transformation, it doesn't work without it, right? So when you see the transformation at the bottom, that came out of like a designing landscape meeting. So the landscape architect, what they did was they put like the existing conditions on the walls of Eden Bay's community center, showed it to everybody, and then everyone had an opportunity to opine and talk about what was important and what was not important to them, what was the history of certain areas. So there wasn't an assumption, that we knew, like, what was the significance of this flagpole, right? Or what's the significance of this block right here? So it was really a dive in discussion of folks that participated. The other thing we did was we gave residents an opportunity to see our other sites. So, we rented a bus one early Saturday morning. on our, that's a part of the process. It wasn't, I'm not saying this to say I did it on anybody's time, and we did it on a Saturday morning, which was most suitable for the residents. And we took them to another site so they could see it. We let other residents open up their homes, pre-COVID, of course, open up their homes so they could show it, show where they lived and show what the differences were. And I think it's always best to have other residents talk to residents so that they can share what the experiences are. So I hope we're not insulting. I hope we're not insulting you, because we're just sharing the experience that we had. But we also know that it's also good for residents to talk about it as well.
All right, thank you. Robert, I don't know if you have questions. I do have some questions, and I just wanted to open this up to other people
Yeah, go
who
ahead.
are part of this.
Go ahead.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? I don't see any hands raised. It seems like all the questions in the chat were answered. I had one point, and I have two questions. So my first point, I know you made an example in the presentation that you gave that Edenwald, for example, is getting $218,000 in improvements per unit, whereas overall NYCHA is getting $187,000 per unit. I guess that's the sort of the economy of scale, but
just to clarify, that's the need. That's not what NYCHA is getting, because there is no funding for the rest of NYCHA's portfolio as of yet. It's just that's what the need is.
So the need, this is what's needed per unit, then, is what you're saying. This is not the financing you're getting. Oh, okay.
Correct.
I misunderstood that then, because that seems like an awful lot of money, $218,000, and to someone like myself, that's not a helpful metric. It's one thing to include boilers and painting of common spaces in a per unit space. That there's no sort of economy of scale saying that you get 218,000 and that's what the need in Edenwald is. So I just think that needs to be presented better. Secondly, one of the questions, and I guess I know where Robert Hall is coming from now, and this was an issue raised by Mr. Barber. I did not know, and maybe you can help explain, I guess there is some sort of cost per tenant or some sort of benefit per tenant that the tenant council receives. And I guess that's no longer going to be the case if they switch over to Section 8.
So I can clarify that. The rules regarding tenant associations, resident rights are all captured in the RAD rules and regulations that HUD promulgates, and so they do cover. And again, I use the word grandfather. It was designed to make sure that all of the same rights and protections are transferred over when people come into the project-based Section 8 program.
Yeah.
One of those things that HUD requires is to continue to pay TPA funds at between $15 and $25 per unit to the resident association. What we are doing, and again, this is one of those areas where NYCHA is improving upon the basic RAD program that HUD requires. HUD only requires that we give $15 a unit. We are now requiring on all of our PACT projects that they give the full $25 per unit to the resident associations. So that is another benefit. They'll get increased funding over what they currently get from NYCHA.
Okay. So right now, that's what they currently receive, $25 per unit.
Right now, they get $15 a unit because NYCHA keeps 10 for administrative costs, and the resident association gets $15 a unit. And after conversion through PACT, they'll get $25 a unit going forward.
They'll get the full 25.
Exactly.
Correct.
Oh, so they'll get more money then.
Exactly.
All right. So in a situation like Edenwald, that has, if I remember properly, about 2,000 units, that's $25 per unit.
Correct. And it's over 2,000.
Okay. All right. So that's number one. And I guess my second question was regarding, so now I understand. So I do appreciate this because this was an eye-opener for me. I didn't realize that by converting them over to Section 8, that they're no longer, because I guess that's what the conversion is that they're no longer going to be NYCHA residents, yet the property is still going to remain in NYCHA. So how does that work in terms of, so for example, we do capital funding as a city. I don't know if NYCHA does it separately from the rest of the city agencies, but we do collective bargaining. We do capital funding for the whole city. So we're converting these people out of NYCHA or out of, I guess they still retain some sort of city. Can you what I'm trying to say is we're giving them city funding through our capital monies, yet we're letting private developers manage our monies.
Right.
Yeah, so it is a true partnership with private entities. And just to clarify too, we don't see residents at PAC developments as not being NYCHA residents anymore. They still are NYCHA residents. They live in our buildings, they live in our communities. We're still responsible for them. And we're responsible for ensuring they live in good quality housing and that housing remains permanently affordable.
Okay. How long is the lease when they do the conversion, how long is the lease for the private developer?
So the term of the ground lease is 99 years, and that's as long as you can go in a ground lease. What happens after that is technically the property comes back to NYCHA. But we have a long ways to go to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean that seems like an awful long time. I know you have clawback provisions though. If I guess they run afoul of any of your agreements, you can claw back that and gain control again.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. And part of that, I mean, I know you say you retain all the rights, you have to cap the rent and everything. Yeah, I think my chairman's point on how does the private developer make money, I know you said it takes a number of years, but I guess in year 30, when I'm 70 years old, is that when, there's going to be a balloon payment where these NYCHA residents are going to get a sticker shock on their rent statements?
No, so rent is regulated by HUD and will always be regulated by HUD. Because remember, we're only shifting the funding source. It still comes from the federal government. It's just a much more stable and better funded program than the Section 9 program. The money that development partners make off the deal are all written into the terms as we negotiate towards a closing and conversion. They get a fee off being a development partner and taking on the risk of construction. They have to take out the loan after all. They are now responsible for managing the property, so they get an annual fee every year based on the number of units and all the work that they do to manage the property, and that comes out of the rent and the subsidy that comes into the property. That other point that I was trying to make was really just to say that they have to put in their own money also. So we typically see between 5 and 10% of the total project cost is paid for by the development team, and they need to make that back. So any excess revenue that's generated during the operations of the project comes back to the developer to recoup that cost. But it's not the main source of how they make money. Through the project, they make a fee up front, and then they make ongoing property management fees for taking care of the property.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Okay. Now, George, you can see it from the other sector. That's why I call it de facto privatization.
Yeah, but you're getting more money.
Yeah.
When you have a chance.
Well, I mean, just to also to be clear, we partner with private organizations to implement our capital programs too, right? We hire private contractors to do all the work that the city and the state and the federal government funds. So in a lot of ways, it's very similar to the way that government operates across the board and NYCHA as well through our capital programs. It's just a different arrangement.
Okay. I have 3 hands raised. Sydney Blair, you had the question?
I just have a clarifying question. So with regard to the developers, if I'm understanding correctly, they are incentivized to participate in these projects because it's more like a long-term investment where they make interest on the money that they put in in your words, on the project?
What are you talking about?
So
Hello?
this isn't this is an industry where there are organizations that know how to renovate buildings, manage affordable housing, and keep them in a good state of repair. And so just like any other organization where you pay a fee for a service, that's how our development partners operate. NYCHA has struggled to take care of these properties on our own. A lot of that has to do with our structural issues within our organization, and also the level of funding that we have access to. And so through these partnerships, as you've seen with Baychester, it's really a proven model that's allowed us to stabilize our housing and provide better living places for our residents.
Right, so that is so that, but I think someone had earlier asked how are developers being like enticed or invited into participating in this program, being incentivized to make sure that the properties that they overtake under NYCHA are well maintained and kept up to par, essentially. And from what I understand, I heard you say, yes, they have to put in money on the project as well, but they make that money back plus interest. And that's what I just want to clarify that that is what I heard.
That is one of the sources of profit that a developer would make on a project, yes.
Okay.
And NYCHA plays an oversight role throughout, and all the terms of what they can make and what they do make are all spelled out there. So we carefully regulate and monitor the profits that come back to the partner. And again, to the question about are these still NYCHA communities? They absolutely are, and we monitor and oversee all of the work the managers do and their performance, and really hold them to account. Actually, we have quite a lot of recourse in the Section 8 program, because if the units fall into any sort of disrepair, we can cut the subsidy. So that's a really strong disincentive for the managers to let the properties go. They really have to keep them in the highest quality conditions possible.
Okay. Thank you. Sydney, you have anything else?
That was all. Thank you.
All right, cool. We have Anthony Reed and then we have Daniel Barber who have their hands up. Anthony?
Oh, I just wanted to speak in reference to profits of the developers. I'm a prime example of being underpaid and also filing charges with the Department of Labor. So what happens is they come in our community, and we're supposed to, that's why I asked about the prevailing wage language, because it's a mandation of rate. So what they do is they use the prevailing wage language to not discriminate against the non-union. And I'm not going to discriminate against anyone, but what I'm saying is we need benefits and we need to feed our family. So what happens is they underpay these workers when they're supposed to be paying them the prevailing wage scale. And if the workers are not aware of it, what happens is that's where a lot of their profit come from. So what they used to have before is they used to have an equal opportunity officer that came around and asked the workers. That's how I found out about it. They come around and ask the workers how much they're getting paid, and if they're getting paid this amount or not. Are you guys affiliated with any of that? Is there anyone that checks to make sure that the workers are being paid right? Anybody home?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about how to respond. I'm not familiar with the exact process that we use to ensure compliance, but I can follow up and get back to you.
Okay.
Unless anyone else on the call has a sense of how that process works.
It's our Reach department that goes around to do compliance. So we can actually contact them and give you the entire layout of their process of how they make and maintain the compliance.
Okay, does that work for you, Anthony?
No, really don't. Can you give me something better than that? Your Reach department, who sees That
our
your
Reese
Reese department does.
So our Reese department, it's NYCHA Reese department that they're in charge of all of the hiring under Section 3 and making sure prevailing wage is being done on all of our projects. So those are the ones that follow the federal law and make sure and maintain with all of our partners, PACT and others, to make sure that we're following all of the federal rules.
What is their process? Do they come around? What do they do? What do they do?
So again, I don't work for Reese per se, right? I know that that's their function, and that's why I want to make sure to get in writing what their, what do they do, so that we can make sure to share it with the entire group.
All right.
Right, and they're supposed to have signs up stating that it's prevailing wage and what you're supposed to be getting paid. Am I correct?
Correct. So L&M, if anybody wants to respond to that, of what is it that you do?
L&M, anybody home?
Hi. Yes. Hi. Sorry about that. I just had to hop off of mute. This is Ayana again. So in terms of prevailing wage construction and monitoring, we actually hire a wage monitor who comes on site and interviews the laborers who are on site and asks them what their positions are, and educates them and gives them the information to make sure that they're paid in accordance with the wage standards for their specific role.
Now, are you guys affiliated with apprenticeship programs?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the program.
Are you guys with any apprenticeship programs, training?
So we are not directly affiliated with an apprenticeship program, but we do have a partnership with Local 79 that we've utilized on some other NYCHA developments that we're working on.
Where at?
So
I'm a member of 79. Where at?
So we're actually working with them on some new construction development and also on some other NYCHA NYCHA developments. Linden Houses.
Where at? Can you give me some information on where we're at? So I can write it
Yes,
down?
absolutely. Linden Houses. We have not closed on that transaction yet, but it's going to be Linden Houses and Penn Wortman, and also Harlem River Houses. And then in terms of the new construction that we've worked on with or collaborated with Local 79, that's Sendero Verde.
You're speaking a little too fast, Ayana. Slow down.
Yep. No. So
all right.
On the new construction developments that we're working on, that's
Linden Housing. Where else?
Linden Houses,
East New York, Linden and Penn Wortman, and we haven't closed the deal on those yet. So it's Linden and Penn Wortman in East New York, and Harlem River Houses in Harlem.
Harlem River Houses. So when you said you guys is working out a deal, what do you? Can you help me understand that?
Absolutely, because we haven't closed on the deal yet for those two sites. So we're still finalizing everything, bringing everything to a close, but we have an established partnership to make that happen. And that has been factualized because Ayana said we're working with them on a new construction site at East Harlem. It's called Sendero Verde.
Okay, I thank you for the information.
Yeah,
thank you for the information. What I really was asking you that for, because I've seen a lot of developers come in our community, right? And what happens is, when they come in, we have a job, and when they leave, we don't have a job. It's no upgrading. We're not more marketable. Where you guys is bringing training in, you bringing careers in. Like, we want to upgrade the community. We want to upgrade the residents also.
Well, let me also add to that. And as you know, we said it evolves, right? So when we started, we were just trying to deal with local partnerships, and as you said, there wasn't anybody really assuring that there was a pathway, a career pathway here, right? So along with that, we also, with our permanent housing, we will also have an understanding relationship, and we have to establish that too. But I believe we have them already at Baychester with 32 BJ. So that allows, not only do we have a goal of making sure there's percentages of residents that are NYCHA residents, but they also have the opportunity to benefit of getting not just the wages, but the opportunity of mentoring, as you stated, training, that will help them retain. And then we also have another organization that we work with. I mean, it's been growing. It's called Building Skills, and what Building Skills does, we also utilize the resumes that we receive, put them in that pool. So, like, if there's other opportunities for jobs, then Building Skills can use the resumes, of course, with the residents' approval, to seek other opportunities outside of this site and beyond it. I mean, we've seen opportunities, Mr. Reed, where someone could start off just being like a laborer, and then they wind up being a super. And you know, when you're a super, I'm not minimizing maintenance, but you get an apartment. So, like, you know, that's a relationship that we've seen happen in some of our sites, and we want to just make sure that we can build on it, not just with us getting, you know, a profit, but also that folks can buy in, be a part of the construction of where they live, and then hopefully be able to find a new industry that they would like to work in. So, but I think if there's this committee that you're stating that could help us monitor that, I'm not suggesting a monitor now, but I am suggesting that more feedback is always better.
Partnership,
Yes.
that's all
Well,
partnership.
you know, I think people collaborate, whatever it is that if you see something, if you hear something, the only way we can grow is if you tell us. And so I think that if that information is something that we can grow in from what we share, we'd have to do that.
All right. Anthony, is that it?
Thank you for the information, but I'm from Wyoming. Show me.
I got you on that.
Okay. The final question will come from Daniel Barber. You have your hand raised, sir? You still there, Daniel? Okay, cool.
Is he there?
I don't know. Yeah, he's still here. Daniel Barber, you have your hand up? Is that from before? I don't believe so. All right, Robert.
Okay. All right, listen, we're gonna wrap things up, but the key word here, and I'm gonna say this, Mr. Kowinski, I want everyone to know, all right, is transparency, all right? Now, Eden Wall's getting ready to get in. The first question is L&M gonna get the Eden Wall contract? Well, we don't know, all right? But in any event, the fact of the matter is there needs to be clear transparency. Now, I have 2 residents in my office right now who live in Eden Wall, and they don't know what's going on. And I know there's been a couple of meetings. So that being said, I just want to regurgitate once again, clear transparency. It's definitely needed.
I'm sorry, Robert. I don't mean to cut you off, but we do have Walter McNeil, who is the tenant president of Eden Wall. Walter, do you want to put your 2 cents in on this argument? And he's a former board member, so the voice we can trust.
Thank you. I'll put 2 cents in. Thanks.
All right, Walter. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just joking with you. I love you. Listen, if you can hear me well, the residents receive a lot of information from the PAC program. They receive large white envelopes each month. They have different Zoom meetings at least twice a month. If they don't know what's going on, they should know. They ask questions, they ask the management office, they ask me a lot of questions. And they're very curious. All they have to do is walk across the street. Baychester is right across the street. We have family over there, we have friends over there. I've been knowing Ms. Gross for 15 years. It's just across the street. The same senior center that everyone participates in is Bay Eden Senior Center, is in Baychester, is right across the street. Everyone knows when they say what are they going to do to Eden Wall, that I think just look right across the street. People go across the street and they like what they see. I like what they see. And I hope that Eden Wall will get the same thing as Baychester, because they definitely need it. That's as simple as that. The residents want what they see across the street, and that's Baychester Houses. It's beautiful over there. And we want the same thing in Edenwald. As simple as that, as simple as that. I knew what type of meeting this was, so I didn't want to really get involved, you know, with my personal opinion, but I will speak for the residents, and you can ask the residents. If the residents don't know, then they need to come to the management office, ask the tenant association, because there's a lot of information for them to find out what's going on in Edenwald. And if not, then look just across the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. And once again, we're all here. We're going to support this endeavor. We're going to support you 200%. Just so you know, we're there for you. Okay? Any other concerns of any magnitude? Questions, comments? All right. That being said, I think we're going to wrap it up. All right. I want to thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kowitski. I want to thank everyone.
Thank you so much.
Barbara, all right, because there's a lot of effort that goes in here, and we're a bunch of unpaid presidents. But we have passion, and we care about what we do, obviously, because we know what we know. So this is it, and I'm glad we had this conversation. All right, George, you can wrap it up.
And at any moment, we're also available. We want to come over to Baychester Houses, take a quick glimpse, a quick tour of some of the improvements. We're more than happy to. We're open with the community board. Fortunately, we're community partners. We work well, and we always are in constant communication. So if that could even be more helpful to see some of the upgrades and to help understand, we're more than welcome. I'm more than happy to have you guys come over.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
All right. Take care. Have a good evening.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Everybody, good night.
Night.
Right.
All right.